Introduce our guests today, Kim Estes and Arturo Ozuna from Tarrant County College. So I guess you guys can go ahead if you're ready, and I'll try to keep an eye on the chat, and then we'll try to keep an eye on the Q&A and help with anything that needs doing.
Thank you. All right, well, welcome to our session, which is titled Texas Two-Step, Utilizing Open Educational Resources, or OER, and peer-developed courses, which we refer to as PDCs, to improve educational access, equity, and quality. Thank you for the introduction there. Just want to talk a little bit today. We're going to spend a little bit of time talking about these two programs and sort of how we're trying to create synergy around them. I want to give, so we are with Tarrant County College, and we are specifically with the Connect campus. And the Connect campus is essentially the online campus for our institution. Is there anything else you want to talk about or say, Kim, about the online campus?
Sure. Tarrant County College Connect Campus was the first all-online campus in the state of Texas. We're one of the largest. And we are not just where the online students take online classes. We are an actual accredited campus in the college district. There are 6 total campuses in our district, of which we are one. So we're very proud to be the Connect campus. Thanks, Arturo.
Sure. And so, as our titles sort of suggest, Kim and I are involved in instructional design, and our work has been focused on peer-developed courses as part of the departmental, and Kim's going to get into a little more of the background on that. But I wanted to talk a little bit about how we found ourselves doing OER, and part of that is my doctoral work. I wrote a dissertation about a year ago as part of my doctoral work on I explored factors that impact a faculty member's decision to engage in OER development. And so as part of that work, became interested in bringing OER to Connect Campus, and a lot of the work that I did as part of that also informed, and talk a little bit about how it informed the work that we're doing. But essentially, the OER led to some insights on OER sustainability at the campus level, and that's informed some of our work as we're moving forward. So just wanted to provide all right, so in this session, again, we're going to explore OER and PDC programs. We're going to reflect on year 1 of the program and some of the challenges that we faced as part of this implementation. And then we're going to talk a little bit about programmatic and assessment methods. How are we going to assess the impact of the synergy that we're trying to create with these two programs? So I am going to pass it on to Kim, who's going to talk a little bit about our PDC program specifically.
Terrific. Thank you, Arturo. So with our peer-developed courses was something that was already at Connect Campus when I got here. But when I was hired as a senior instructional designer, I was tasked with changing the direction and adding some quality control measures for the peer-developed courses. So peer-developed courses are basically online courses. There you go. They were established in 2016 as part of an academic quality assurance program by our president, Dr. Carlos Morales. And there's we have a hyperlink there to a paper that Dr. Morales wrote back in 2016 on the need for the peer-developed courses as a quality assurance measure. And so we can share that in the chat in a few minutes. The goal was to align teaching tools and strategies with learning outcomes, to make sure that what we say we are teaching in our syllabus and what we are teaching in class is aligned, that the outcomes are aligned, that the assessments actually assess what we're teaching, that sort of thing. And we're providing that across the board. As an online campus, we have a very small number of full-time faculty. We have about 43 to 47 full-time faculty. And then we have over 500 adjuncts. And so making sure that everybody is on board with all of our standard navigation, all of our requirements and policies as a campus was difficult. So these peer developed courses were created to address that. There were some questions about standard. We changed LMS platforms during the pandemic. And so a lot of our old peer developed courses were not up to the standard that the school wanted to move forward with. So when I came in, we revamped the program to add those additional standards. So we moved forward with an emphasis on textbook, being textbook agnostic. We are moving forward with being Quality Matters aligned, with being WCAG double to AAA aligned with our accessibility, so that our courses are really accessible to everybody. We bring in subject matter experts. These are our faculty, and they create the content, and they're being paid. We pay a stipend to create original content. We don't just slap a Pearson textbook on there and say, okay, read chapter 1 and do the quiz. We actually ask our faculty to create original content around their subject matter, so that it doesn't ever go out of copyright compliance, because we're not using a purchased or licensed textbook or information. And then that information is saved, and then we can share that out to all 6 campuses in our district, and anyone can use it without violating copyright. We also want to make sure that it is aligned to our learning objectives, and all of the instructional and learning materials can travel easily through our LMS with the course. The process takes 10 weeks. There is training up front. Our SMEs, teams of anywhere from 2 to 5 subject matter experts, work with an instructional designer. And we have content team meetings and project management meetings. We create one 16-week course format, and then we provide outlines for smaller semester formats. And then it is submitted for a internal Quality Matters review. And when it passes that and an accessibility review, they're paid a stipend, and the course is shared through our LMS with all of the instructors in our district. So that's 6 campuses worth of instructors. So that's the general overview for the PDCs. Oh, good question in the chat. Yeah. We also address some of the quality standards that we look at in PDCs. RSI, if you are not familiar with RSI and you're working in the online environment, you need to be. That is, of course, regular and substantive interaction, the Department of Education's guidelines for what needs to be taking place in online classes in terms of interaction between instructors and students. Title 13 financial aid is tied. Is it Title 13? Title 3? Sorry, I've got all my titles. I've been doing accessibility. Is our accessibility, our financial aid is tied to regular and substantive interaction. So we have to make sure that we're meeting the guidelines from the DOE, or we can be audited and fined and would have to return all of our financial aid money. So if you are working in the online environment and you're not familiar with RSI, I highly recommend running over to the DOE site and taking a look at the requirements for regular and substantive interaction. We include opportunities for that in our PDCs. Again, we undergo a Quality Matters rubric internal review. All of the staff in my department are APP QMR trained staff with QM quality standards, Quality Matters, and Arturo, Dr. Ozuna, is also a peer reviewer for higher ed as well. And then accessibility, all courses are currently built. Single A is the standard. We choose to be AA or AAA wherever possible. So that we are at the higher level of compliance. So everything we do is accessible, keyboard navigable. We provide 100% accurate captions. We provide descriptive transcription. We do alt images and long descriptions for tables, charts, graphs. We just finished a geology PDC that was amazingly time consuming to make a geology class accessible with all of those photos and all of that, but we got that done. So we're very excited that these quality standards are being moved in, so that across the board at TCC, when you use one of our peer developed courses, you know that we are meeting all of these standards. We also do allow, it's not just a course in a box. We do a 70-30 model. We provide 70% of the content, and there's a 30% wiggle room there for the faculty member to come in and add their context making and add some of the articles and the pieces that they're really passionate about, change up some of the work so that it really fits their teaching style and their mode of teaching, but remains aligned with our learning outcomes and our goals. So we're very excited to be moving forward with this piece of the PDC transition. Which sort of fed its way into the OER project, at least in terms of choosing the team and our first project, right, Arturo?
Absolutely. So I wanted to talk a bit about the digital OER program that we're sort of building to create some synergy with what Kim has developed or continued as part of the PDC program. So the overall purpose of the OER and what we're calling digital OER program, we are the digital campus, and so we're definitely trying to use the digital language when we talk about this initiative. And so the main purpose was to increase equity and access to quality, no-cost educational materials. We have programs that provide low-cost options, and we were looking to take that a step further. And we'll talk a little bit about the challenges associated with that as well. And so we wanted to create a no-cost option. And we also wanted to be very intentional about improving educational outcomes for traditionally underserved students, such as students of color, first-generation students, economically disadvantaged students, and so I often say when we're talking about this work that we're not just in the work that we're doing, we're not creating just OER textbooks. We're creating sort of textbook experiences, and so we want to think about them in those ways. So there are a couple of ways that we fund these projects, and I want to talk about these three ways, that sort of main ways that we're funding these projects. And the first is a revision redesign, and we call that R squared or R2. And essentially these are for major revisions of existing OER, right? OER that's already been developed. So we fund essentially or plan to fund teams to redesign or revise or remix existing OER materials to be adopted in a single course and to be used as part of the PDC process, right? And so some examples of that are, creating one textbook from many, or removing sections, or bringing together other remix options. And participants who engage in this are also expected to be part of assessments for the program itself, to talk about the program in advocacy, and to give us feedback on their experiences as part of the program. These are typically we've set out around 6 to 8 months for these types of projects. And the stipends that we offer as part of this process are $5,000 per participant. I also want to talk about our new development programs. And so this is essentially creating an OER textbook experience from scratch, right? And so this is, we do this and plan to do this in scenarios where there is no existing OER, or the content that's available that's open just doesn't fit what we're trying to accomplish. And so, we ask and task our faculty teams to create primary source materials, digital content when necessary, and to create interactive materials as well. And anything that's related to those materials. And for these, these are around 10 to 12 month projects, and we offer stipends to our faculty and of up to $10,000 per participant for these projects. And then we wanted to leave space for projects that are not necessarily full revisions and not necessarily new projects, right? And so we also created a category which we call next level enhancements. And essentially, we will fund smaller scoped projects that that may include some revision, may include some new development, but on a smaller scale. And so some examples of this could be maybe updating a specific aspect of an open textbook that's already there, or creating supplemental materials for a textbook that's really needed, or or incorporating more diverse perspectives, for example, into an existing textbook that's out there. So and the timeline for these vary, and the scope also will vary on these. And another scenario we see on this is, for example, we have a textbook that's out there, but maybe it's not accessible, to the standards that we need it to be, so that it fits, our expectations for accessibility. So we would very well consider funding a project like that as a next level enhancement. So I want to talk a little bit about how we select these projects. So it's a little bit different than what you're seeing traditionally right now, right? Which is we're seeing, and certainly in the work that I did in my dissertation, there's a lot of sort of grant-funded type or grant style projects. And so what we're planning to do with our program is to fund it based on the strategy of what we need as to fit demand for our PDC process, and to build some synergy with that as well. So we essentially will pick projects based on what the nature of the project is, what is the impact, and what is the alignment with this PDC timelines, and then scope, inclusive design, and then obviously special projects. So we're more sort of actively recruiting for these projects, as opposed to faculty teams coming together and saying, or a faculty member coming together and saying, I want to build this. We're sort of actively saying, we really need an OER in this area. Who is interested in that, and almost sort of recruiting faculty to be a part of the project. And these projects aren't just available and exclusive to Connect faculty. We certainly also include and look for and plan to recruit faculty from our other campuses as well to be a part of these projects. So we have a review process that we have in place. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about where we are in the project. This is all sort of drafted, right? Because we are in a pilot phase. And so, but in preparation for what we're trying to establish, we've created a lot of sort of infrastructure around what we plan to do. And this is one of them. So the way we plan to sort of, the review process that we plan to have in place for these projects is going to be sort of a twofold peer review process. And one of them will be what we call a midpoint review. And essentially it'll be right around the midpoint of a project. And it'll be designed and there are sort of two facets that we're thinking about doing this around. One is almost like a design review. So an instructional designer will go through, look at accessibility, look at structure, look at web accessibility, things of that nature. And then there'll be sort of a content review as well. And feedback will be provided, general feedback on 13 characteristics. And we've borrowed some of these characteristics, specifically the content from the Rebus group rubric. And then we've developed our own based on what we do for QM and alignment and things of that nature. So our midpoint reviews will be sort of twofold. And the same with our final review, which will be a little more comprehensive. The way we're looking at a midpoint will be almost like you either meet that standard or you don't. And then the final review will be more of a scoring system where there will be feedback and opportunity for the development teams to submit revisions based on that feedback. we're also sort of leaving open the option around what we consider an expert reviewer in this sense, because we certainly want content reviewers, but we also may need expertise in other areas specific to what we're building with these experiences. So if, for example, if these systems are highly interactive, or if there is a need, for example, if we were doing a revision around the idea of including diverse perspectives, then we may have an expert specific to what are diverse perspectives in this field, right? And so so we're leaving sort of that window open around what an expert reviewer looks like, and also we have an instructional designer who reviews as part of the final review as well.
Right, and Arturo, can I throw an example in with the pilot that we're doing is Texas government, and so being able to provide unique experience or unique and diverse perspectives about government in the state of Texas, right from the get-go, there's a lot of opportunity there. So one of those experts might be someone who is from a different population or a previously marginalized group of people who may not have had their history and their experience in Texas government shared in the traditional textbook. And so an expert like that would be an example of an expert reviewer who would come in and make sure that we are including that perspective with authenticity and with integrity.
Correct. So where we are in the process. So essentially right now we are in phase one of what we're calling a sort of a three-phased approach, right? And this has moved a little bit, and the phases have stayed the same, but we've faced some challenges around acquisition of things that and some challenges internally that have sort of created some have forced us to move timelines around, but we're essentially in the build phase of this project, and the build phase essentially consists of a pilot, which we're sort of knee deep in the middle of, and what we want out of this phase is to develop an infrastructure to be able to manage the development program and to be able to also create infrastructure for assessing the impact of the work that we're doing. The other thing that we want to do in this phase is to promote OER adoption, not just our program, but just OER adoption in general, and to partner with existing OER developers and repositories. So folks like OpenStax and OER Commons, we're trying to get the word out about the work that we're trying to accomplish, and then potentially create partnerships around what we're trying to do here, and also create some advocacy and promotion and outreach internally within our own faculty, so they're aware of the work that we're doing. Phase two will be for us to sort of launch multiple projects and really refine our standard operating procedures based on the feedback from our pilot program. Again, continue to develop partnerships and more strategic partnerships, and then to also build capacity as we're continuing this work. We're going to, it's going to inform the type of staffing and technology and things of that nature that we may need, so that we can move this forward in a way that's sustainable. And then obviously our phase three will be, ultimately we're running multiple projects at one time. We're thinking and sold sort of the idea of doing somewhere along the lines of 2 to 4 projects when we're up and running. And at that point we're starting to we'll start to talk about, not necessarily talk about, but implement a maintenance infrastructure. So how, we're not just going to build OER and then leave them to be, right. We're going to build them and then consistently revise them. And so we're going to build an OER infrastructure. We're going to explore things like Z degrees potentially. And then we, at that point, we'll start looking at things like student-driven projects or actively funding OEP as part of the work that we're doing. So these are things that we're looking at in our 3-phased approach to this program. So Kim, do you want to talk a little bit about where OER sort of fits within the PDC process.
Sure. And it's really interesting because really when we start really digging into peer developed courses in OER, it makes sense to create sort of the OER first and then build the PDC around, or build the PDC out to address some of the content and use some of the content. We sort of had it the other way around. We had the courses first, and then we started looking at the materials. In fact, the Texas government, we built a Texas government peer developed course, and the ladies in it, because they are textbook agnostic courses, were really struggling finding an OER that they liked. And there was a lot of conversation during that 10-week build process about, oh, we should just build our own. We don't like this in this one, and we don't like this and that one. I hate having to pick and choose. I'd love to just be able to put it all together for one. And so when Arturo brought the idea forward, hey, I'd really like to start this project, I said, I have a group of faculty who would really be interested. And that actually wound up being the group who is building the OER with Arturo, our first pilot. But we're really looking at the peer developed course is that instructional piece, right? It's the lectures, the learning activities, the assessments, interactivity between the faculty member and the students, the learning resources, articles and videos and primary resources in the case of this Texas government course. And they're all brought together. And then the role of the OER with the PDC is to serve as a primary resource or a secondary resource to support that learning, right? Moving into providing that open resource for both the faculty and the student to really dig into the content. And again, like Arturo said, with some of our goals to really add additional perspectives, to bring in multimedia, to try to make this an actual lived experience, right? A learning experience rather than a textbook. We really want to bring a lot of that in. So it makes sense to have then this course that can refer back to these resources built into that OER, along with all of those lectures and those assessments, and they all will align. We are actually, the OER is built with learning objectives, and our peer developed course learning objectives will align with that as well. So again, that whole piece of quality content, quality instruction, everything aligned to learning outcomes with assessments that work. Arturo, you want to take that one?
Yeah, absolutely. So essentially, the way we're sort of thinking about how this will work is ultimately we'll strategically create an OER project for a subject that is needed, and then we will build an accompanying PDC project or a course that will accompany that, and then the maintenance structure will kick in, and we'll maintain OER and maintain PDC, so that they remains this sort of synergy between them, and they're always working in together and not apart. And the thing about this is that we've identified as part of the work that we're doing is that maintenance structures aren't going to be the same for so we've allowed some variability around maintenance for an OER. For example, the pilot OER, initially we had said, all OER are going to have a 4-year window. Well, when we met with the team for the pilot, that said really our OER for Texas government should be revised every 2 years because the Texas legislature meets every 2 years. And so there are revisions that are needed just as part of that process. So we move that and are creating some room for there to be some variability around what our maintenance windows look like for these courses and for the OER as well.
Right. And can I throw in, Arturo, that a lot of that continuous improvement model that we're talking about also includes protocols, processes, procedures, and how we use all of the items that we're creating within our district as well. When I first got here, it was kind of like, OE what? And now our district is marking courses in our registration software that use OER so that our students can select sections that are dependent on OER instead of purchase textbooks. So we're starting to see a growth in awareness. We're starting to see people wanting to identify OER-based web-based courses more readily for student purposes. And so making sure that everything, we're not just aligning the content and the peer-developed course resources, but also looking at our protocols, how we're addressing them as a district, and how we're making these things available to students and making students aware of these. All of that needs to be updated in the process as well.
Absolutely. So, Kim, do you want to talk a little bit about this? How we plan to measure impact on
Sure.
the work that we're doing?
So with the peer-developed courses, this being a program that has already been in effect since 2016, we look at what we're looking at now. Our campus has a data team, and we pull completion rates, success rates, those sort of things, and we're looking at course completion in peer-developed courses. Again, the purpose of the peer-developed course was to provide quality standards for instruction to make sure that we're getting the rigor and the alignment that we're looking for with some set agreed-upon standards across all the sections on our campus, right? And we share these out district-wide. And so what we're going to look at is some comparative data between individuals using the peer-developed courses and faculty who are not, and looking at course completion rates, we're even looking into data with student end-of-course surveys, and we're starting to pull in data to see what impact we're seeing with these new standards and these newly developed peer-developed courses to kind of help guide where we're going with them and what we're doing with the content and the quality of those. We're also looking at downloads and use, right? How many of our faculty? We have Connect Campus divisions. Obviously, we're revamping, and so we don't have peer-developed courses for every single section. Those of you who work in higher ed know there's a lot of sections out there, right? So we do need to increase the number of courses that we cover. So we're looking at the number of downloads of the PDCs that we do offer and how many of our faculty are using them. Every peer-developed course that we create has now has a faculty review survey, so they can tell us what they liked about the course and what they didn't, what they felt was effective, whether there are links that are missing or there is content that is outdated, whether hey, I have a suggestion, this is a way better video you should be using, or you need to address this topic in the videos you're creating. And so we're going to look at the impact of that as well. And then faculty feedback and comparative data mixed together with that. We are also building as a kind of a branch off of this from the PDCs and the OER. We're building an instructional media library where we are actually going to stipend faculty to come in and record original content for us, lectures, to create slide decks, to work on assessments and group projects and work on things like that. And then we're going to house them in a repository on campus that LTIs with our LMS, so that we have campus created OER materials that our faculty and students can use anytime. And so that's kind of come out of this OER and PDC mashup, because these are things that we can use in our OER, we can use them in our peer-developed courses. They can be randomly selected and integrated as needed by our faculty. In terms of the OER, do you want to address the OER, or do you want me to?
Absolutely, but we have a question first. So, Kim,
I'm sorry,
Lori asked, do you get pushback from faculty about academic freedom with regard to participating in the PDCs?
Oh, no, that's the $1 million question, is it? Yes, we do, but it depends. Originally, when the peer-developed course, sorry, we got some echo. Originally, when the peer-developed course plan came out, they were told 100% you have to use it, you can't alter it, no changes, must be used as is. And without some guiding standards to make sure that the quality of every PDC was at the same level, there was some pushback there, right? Like, oh, this is an awful video, why would you include this? Or this quiz doesn't even address what I'm teaching, and I teach this in a different way or using a different example. And so conversations with our leadership, we got a new vice president of academic affairs, we talked with the deans, we really worked with our chairs, and we came up with the 70-30 model, and giving them that 30%, they all agree. And when they look at it, it's irrefutable. Our course aligns with the learning outcomes you're supposed to be teaching. So if you just take our content, you're going to cover all of the learning outcomes we are required to teach. But here's 30% of leeway to add your articles, bring in that discussion prompt that you like better, to adjust a group project, or to add questions to a test that more address the way you teach that course. We're actually seeing surprisingly less pushback now. So we recognize that how you teach a course is your academic freedom, right? The content is not. We have set learning outcomes that we have submitted to our accrediting agency. We are required to teach that. So everybody who teaches Biology 1301 has to teach these learning outcomes from our district, right? So we give them the freedom in how they teach it and adding those resources and ancillary materials if they choose. We even have people who use our peer-developed courses with paid textbooks, with Pearson, with McGraw, but they use our content and then they supplement with the textbook instead of being 100% textbook driven. And that's sort of the move that we're trying to get them to realize, that the textbook and these OERs and all of these are ancillary materials to the instruction. And we're getting a lot better response to that. What is the process to review that 30% customization so that it aligns with the requirements? So we have a great program in our district. It's an e-faculty coaching program. And we have e-faculty coaches that go in and do observation in classes with our faculty. They provide observational data back to the faculty member. We also have a specific evaluation form for our online instructors that our academic affairs department uses to address that alignment. And their evaluators, their chairs, are also looking at that. Our chairs know which sections have peer-developed courses, so they're looking to see that you're using it. They're familiar with the peer-developed courses. They can see the pieces that you've added when they go in and do their evaluations for the semester. So it is a multifaceted collection of data from several points. It's not just a snapshot. It's a scrapbook, and we're putting it all together, and then they're using that data at the end. And all of that data is also shared with our data team on the campus so that we can look at that data as well and see where we're falling down and where some opportunities for improvement are in our processes and the way we look at our data. So hopefully that answered your question for that. Sorry, Arturo, now you get to talk about the OER.
Excellent. No, so some of the ways that, and for those of you who have OER programs, these may look familiar to some of the work that you may be doing, but essentially the way we're looking at impact of OER is in a couple of ways. First is OER adoption, right? We don't want to sort of discount the impact of faculty that are adopting, and some of these have sort of fallen our way just based on institutional priorities, right? So for example, OER adoption, early on in our project, we didn't really have a good idea of how many of our faculty were using OER adoption, and then we were asked by a senior leader, and so we had to figure that out really quickly, and it was a team project to really go in, and it was sort of touching every course that we offer. And to get kind of a number of who's using these, and so it's an ongoing conversation on how we keep track of this. As an institution, we're starting to do the course markings, but that data isn't necessarily shared with just us, right? It's more institutional data, and so we're still trying to figure out specifically how we're going to get some of this information, but this is what we plan on using. The other thing is we really, our focus as an institution is completion and retention. And so, and a lot of the conversations, and again, this has happened organically as part of our work with the data team. They're really wanting to look at retention specifically for marginalized and minoritized students. And so it aligns with the purpose of this program, which is to improve outcomes for those students. And so some of the conversations that we're currently having is how do we turn that into impact data for the work that we're doing, right? So we want to tie this in because it is our purpose. We want to make sure that we're actually impacting the students that we say we're wanting to impact. And so part of the work that we'll be doing is gathering this impact data, and it fits nicely with what the institution is going to be looking at in general anyway. And then ultimately, the other thing that we think is important, and a lot of times we use this data to provide rationale for why we need OER in this area, right? Is what are students going to save with our initial investment, right? And this is the way we communicated our need for the Texas government pilot. We talked about student savings in dollars over the initial investment of, and I think in a semester, students were paying somewhere along the lines of $500,000 or something for textbooks for one semester, right? For this course. And so for, it's an easy sell to say for a $30,000 investment, you're going to save students $1 million a semester for 2 years until you have to revise it. It was really an easy sell to sort of make that argument. So we're also looking at that as potential impact, not only in the impact of the work, but also to provide rationale for the kind of work that we want to be doing and the projects that we want to engage in as part of this this program. So I want to talk a little bit about the challenges that we're facing. So I mentioned that I wrote a dissertation, and in the dissertations, I started to sort of formulate, post-dissertation. It was informed by my dissertation, but I started to sort of thinking about, institution level OER sustainability. And as part of that, we sort of came up with these 4 areas, these 4 overlapping areas of institutional sustainability that you really need to address in order to keep these programs healthy, right? And so you have financial, which again is how you fund this work. You have technological, which means how does this work get done, and where is it hosted, and what technologies do you need for for the interactivity and things of that nature, right? And then you have structural, which is who owns the responsibility for these programs, and what are the standard operating procedures around that. And then you have sort of cultural, which is essentially how do you legitimize this work in the work that you're doing as part of academia, right? And so we've had some challenges, particularly in the structural, technological, and cultural. Like the one that we thought we would have challenges with, which is the financial. We actually don't have that issue at our institution. So I wanted to just kind of talk about some of the challenges that we've faced specifically to OER, because PDCs are sort of accepted and legitimized as part of the work that we're doing, but OER isn't yet, right? It's something that we're piloting and that we're moving forward with. So some of the technological issues that we've had is we've had a lot of issues with we're trying to acquire Pressbooks for the work that we're doing. And we've just had all kinds of issues clearing software acquisition process, right? So it's a multi-step process at our institution, and it requires district support, and so that's been very challenging, them seeing the work that we're doing, and they're seeing it through a district lens. And so we've just had significant delays in acquiring due to what we would just call as red tape and politics, essentially. And so it's a technological issue, but it's also partly cultural, right? And that's why those things are overlapping, right? The other thing is we early on hit a snag in that our Texas government course initially, or OER textbook, sorry, initially was supposed to be a revision, and we had our team vet the OER that was going to be revised early on, but it wasn't extensively vetted. And so what we found as we got into it is that it was going to be more of a new development as opposed to a redesign, revision project. And so we had to pivot quickly. We had to talk to the team to see if they were okay with extending timelines. We had to talk to leadership about extending timelines and also stipends, right? Because it's a significantly more expensive endeavor to do a new development than it is to fund a revision. We had strategically picked a revision process because we thought it would be the easier process to go through the first time out, and we ended up not doing that and pivoting. So we found that we need a more extensive vetting process early on for revision projects, so that we're not, so that we understand the scope of what the work is going to be moving forward, and so that we're not having to pivot every time, right? And so that was a structural issue and challenge that we faced. That's caused some delays in our phase 1 completion. And then the other thing is there's some cultural things that are going on. First of all, there are textbook committees on every campus, and these committees sort of vet and approve textbooks to be used for specific courses. And these textbook committees are very, very much embedded and associated with commercial options. It's very difficult to get in and talk about OER options with textbook committees. Now, the textbook committees, they approve, typically it's 2 to 3 commercial options, and then they say OER. But OER is not, there's no advocacy for it. So most faculty are sort of encouraged, culturally encouraged to adopt commercial options. And so there isn't really a voice embedded within the departmental level that really advocates for OER specifically, right? And so we've had just challenges around getting adoption sort of through the approval process of committee work, and getting advocacy and excitement around OER in that process. The other thing is that we have, as I mentioned earlier, an affordable textbook option, and that is primarily digital access to commercial entities, right? And so while they are affordable, and that's better than the option, which is the other option, which is traditional purchasing of textbooks or renting of textbooks, they are still not as affordable as the type of work that we're trying to accomplish. And what we found is they're really not that affordable, right? They are they're sort of marketed as affordable options, but they're really not really that affordable. So those are some issues that we've sort of encountered in our work in trying to get this program up and running, and trying to make it a sustainable option moving forward.
Right, and can I add one thing to that, Arturo, too?
Absolutely.
Some of that too culturally has been a third-party platform or textbook dependency, because they come with all the bells and whistles, right? The adaptive quizzes, and here's, we actually, one of our textbooks allows them, when they elect the textbook, to click on the things they want it to do, and then their classes are populated for them. Everything is done. And what we're trying to avoid, especially in online learning, is dumping everything into the course and saying, okay, see you at the end of the course, have a nice life. And so we're culturally trying to fight that incredibly effective marketing campaign by commercial entities that is saying, we will take all of this off your plate, right? But what we really want, especially at Connect, is for our faculty to get in the nitty-gritty with our students, and to bring that context making, and to have those conversations, and to really have to dig into that content and make it relevant to their students. And so when you're asking faculty to do more, right, and here's an option over here that does, I don't have to do all of that, it's already done, and it's all already, and it's beautiful, and it does all this. It's hard to have those conversations and get out of that cultural mindset of, why would I do that when the textbook does that for me? When we're really looking at that RSI component, we're really looking at that, some of those quality conversations that really help to broaden and deepen the learning of our students, so that they're getting that quality depth, so that when they leave with a degree from us, they're leaving with the knowledge in hand. Not saying that they don't from other places, but y'all know where I'm going with that. But so that's another cultural issue, is how much of a dependency is there on a textbook when you're looking at the design of your courses. And so we do run into some of that. And again, some of those, this is the way we've always done it, kind of culture that you see in every educational institution from kindergarten through higher ed. So some of those those challenges are kind of what we're facing as Arturo is working very hard to kind of advocate and to spread awareness about OER and why we would use it and how we would use it and what the benefits are.
Well, and I think the other part that we're sort of trying to accomplish is that we're hoping that our OER program and our PDCs make for an attractive substitute to the reliance on commercial, options. So we're hoping that the work that we're doing sort of becomes the course of choice and the option of choice, all because it's open and students don't have to pay for it. And by the way, it's quality and it's vetted and peer reviewed and all the things that that you would expect from from a quality product. So I think we're trying to check all the boxes, including the equity box and the inclusion box. So that's sort of our goal.
We have a question. Has the college looked into creating reward structures in retention, tenure, promotion that might mitigate the cultural challenge of more work for faculty when the commercial options offer such an attractive lure to take a lot of work off of them? Actually, we have just recently gotten to indicating for students that a class is using an OER, and we're really interested in seeing, that's like this semester, right? Or it was spring semester. So we're really interested in looking at the data that comes out of those semesters. Our data team is going to pull success and retention rates, and we're looking at sign-up rates, right? How quickly did those classes fill? We're starting to, I'm just having been on the data committee for the campus since its inception, I really think we're going to see that those classes fill up first, that our other campuses, our fellow campuses, are going to start to realize just the financial benefit to our students in and of itself is going to see sections filling up faster, and faculty are going to want to use OER so that they make their sections, and then we're going to start looking at being able to have those conversations about the quality and why we would want to be involved in this and why we'd want to do this from the faculty perspective. But I think the student benefit up front and the student preference up front is going to drive a lot of the conversation about how deep we delve into OER as a district and how much we advocate and promote that. So right now, we don't have any kind of incentivization right now. What we're looking at, like Arturo said, is providing them with some of those features that they find attractive in the textbook, but with materials that were created by our own faculty and are open, and therefore they can still have some of that ease of use with still maintaining some of that academic freedom, right? It's always funny, we talk about academic freedom and then we want to use what's in the textbook. So giving them the option to be creative, but to use these resources that are already created for them in an open way. But we don't also want them to associate OER with, oh, it means more work for me because it's just a textbook and I still have to come, I don't have an adaptive quiz that can tell when a student's getting a certain type of question wrong or that sort of thing. So we are still in our beginning stages of that kind of advocacy and looking at the data from this first effort of our college to really identify those courses for students and then look at the data to see what the student preferences are telling us. So stay tuned, because I'm hoping that we'll have some data to make those kinds of informed decisions with as we move forward.
Absolutely. So this is our contact information. If you have any questions, yes, we and I advocated for generous stipends as part of this again, and I used information that I gathered as part of my my dissertation to sort of try to create some incentive around the work that we're doing. And plus, OER development is not the same as adoption, right? And it's a lot more difficult, and it's a lot higher barrier of entry. So we wanted to recognize the commitment that faculty were making by for doing this kind of work, and our leadership was absolutely supportive of funding this work, which we're incredibly fortunate for that as well.
I do want to throw in, though, that Arturo brought the goods. So while our Our leadership was 100% on board from day one, but Arturo was able to give them the research and the data to show that their confidence was not misplaced, that the numbers were not arbitrary, that this was based on research and best practices and based on a recognition of the amount of work that was going to have to be done by these faculty. And so compensating them fairly for their time and their efforts this is a reasonable compensation for the amount of work that they're doing. So, so he'll say that we have really good leadership, and it is 100% fact, but he made it very easy for them to be able to say yes with his work.
And I will share a link to my dissertation right now. Let me grab a link to this. For those of you who want to read very long studies.
Yes, and while Arturo is doing that, if any of you have any other questions, if you'd like any more details, you're welcome to type them in the chat, or I don't know if you guys can unmute, but if you can, you're welcome to just ask. Beach reading, there you go, Alicia, I like that idea. But if you have any other questions about the OER project or how we're working, you have our contact information here. You're welcome to reach out to us and to follow up with us if you're curious how things are going. We intend to share our processes and our results and our journey regularly as we move forward.
Well, and we also want to partner, right? And so
yes, absolutely.
If there's a project that that you think would be a good fit with what we're trying to accomplish, certainly that's something that we would be open to. So again, we thank you for your time. If you have other questions, we certainly you can either reach out to us. I've shared our email and then our Twitter handles, so that's something that you can reach us at both. And we want to thank you for your time, and we're optimistic that we will be moving this project forward. And
absolutely.
And we look forward to presenting on year 2
yes.
of the work that we'll be doing. So thank you.